The thunder of artillery echoes across the rain-soaked battlefields of occupied France, autumn 1943. Smoke billows from destroyed German fortifications as Allied forces push deeper into enemy territory. The camera pans across muddy trenches, abandoned panzer tanks, and the grim faces of soldiers who have seen too much death. In the strategic command bunker beneath the French countryside, maps sprawl across wooden tables illuminated by harsh electric bulbs. Red pins mark German positions, blue pins track Allied advances. The air is thick with cigarette smoke and the weight of decisions that will determine the fate of nations. General Duncan McReynolds, Supreme Allied Theater Commander, stands before a massive tactical map, his weathered face bearing the burden of leadership. His steel-gray hair catches the harsh light as he surveys the battlefield reports, with the calm authority of a man who has earned every star on his collar through decades of honorable service. Around him, junior officers move with quiet efficiency, their boots echoing against concrete floors. "Gentlemen," Duncan's voice cuts through the underground command center like a blade. "The German defensive line at Normandy grows stronger each day. Our intelligence indicates Rommel is repositioning 3 panzer divisions along the Atlantic Wall. We need our best field commanders to break through before winter sets in." The scene shifts to the battlefield itself, where General Macbeth advances through the smoking ruins of a French village. His dark eyes burn with fierce determination as he leads his men through streets littered with debris and abandoned Wehrmacht equipment. His uniform, though muddy and battle-worn, cannot hide the predatory grace with which he moves through the chaos of war. Macbeth's reputation precedes him like the roar of his Sherman tanks. At 38, he has already earned a Distinguished Service Cross and 2 Silver Stars through a combination of tactical brilliance and ruthless execution that both inspires and unsettles his fellow officers. Where other generals hesitate, Macbeth strikes. Where others show mercy, he shows efficiency. Beside him marches General Banquo, his oldest friend and most trusted ally. Where Macbeth burns with ambition, Banquo carries himself with steady honor. His weathered face shows the same battlefield experience, but his eyes hold a different light, the clear conscience of a man who fights for duty rather than glory. "Another village liberated," observes, watching French civilians emerge cautiously from cellars and bombed buildings. "The locals say German morale is breaking. They're pulling back faster than our intelligence predicted." Macbeth's jaw tightens as he surveys the tactical situation with calculating eyes. Retreating? Yes. But to what end? Rommel doesn't give ground without purpose. He's drawing us into something. As if summoned by his words, 3 figures emerge from the smoke-filled ruins ahead. They wear the dark coats of French resistance fighters, but something about them seems otherworldly in the dim afternoon light. The eldest, a woman with silver hair and eyes that seem to hold secrets, steps forward with an unsettling smile. The wind carries the distant sound of air raid sirens and the mechanical growl of approaching aircraft. Above them, formations of B-17 flying fortresses lumber across the gray sky like massive metal birds, their engines drowning out all other sound before fading into the distance toward their targets deep in German-occupied territory. The 3 resistance operatives stand motionless among the rubble of what was once a small French chapel, its Gothic spires now broken stumps against the darkening sky. Their dark coats flutter in the wind that carries the acrid smell of cordite and burning timber. The eldest woman's eyes glitter with an intelligence that seems to pierce through the fog of war itself. General Macbeth. She speaks with a thick French accent, yet her voice carries an authority that makes even battle-hardened soldiers pause. "We have been expecting you. Our network has information about your future command structure." Macbeth's hand instinctively moves to his sidearm, but something in the woman's demeanor stops him. Behind him, his aide-de-camp nervously checks his Thompson submachine gun while radio static crackles from the portable communication unit strapped to a sergeant's back. The second figure, a younger woman with haunting blue eyes, steps forward through the scattered masonry and shell casings. "The intelligence we possess comes from unconventional sources, mon général, sources that penetrate deeper than your OSS operatives or British SOE agents ever could." Banquo moves closer to Macbeth, his boots crunching on broken glass from the chapel's shattered windows. "What kind of intelligence?" If you have actionable information about German positions, you should report through proper resistance channels. The third operative, an elderly man whose face bears the scars of previous conflicts, raises a gnarled hand. In the background, the distant rumble of tank treads on cobblestones mingles with the sporadic crack of sniper fire from the German rearguard. "Listen well, General Macbeth," the old man's voice rasps like wind through autumn leaves. "Before this campaign ends, you will wear the stars of a theater commander. The Third Army will be yours to command. Victory in Europe will flow through your strategic vision." Macbeth's dark eyes narrow, studying the trio with the same intensity he reserves for analyzing enemy positions. Theater command? Duncan MacReynolds holds that position. He's the most decorated general in the European theater. The eldest woman's smile grows more enigmatic as she reaches into her coat and produces a sealed envelope bearing official military markings. Wars create vacancies in leadership, General. Sometimes through enemy action. Sometimes through political necessity. She continues, her voice dropping to almost a whisper that somehow carries clearly over the ambient sounds of distant artillery and the mechanical rumble of supply trucks moving along the muddy roads. "And you, General Banquo, your son will carry the banner of military leadership into the next generation. The Banquo name will command respect long after these battlefields have healed." Banquo shifts uncomfortably, his weathered face showing skepticism as he watches Allied fighters streak overhead toward German positions. "My son is barely 16. This war will be over before he's old enough to serve." The wind picks up, swirling debris and ash around the ruined chapel, as the three figures seem to fade slightly in the gathering twilight. The eldest woman's final words carry an ominous weight. "Before the winter snows fall on Berlin, General Macbeth will command all Allied ground forces in Western Europe. This we have seen. This will come to pass." As suddenly as they appeared, the three resistance operatives melt back into the shadows of the ruined village, leaving only the echo of their prophecy and a lingering sense of unease that settles over the advancing Allied forces like evening mist. The Allied command post buzzes with activity as evening settles over the French countryside. Canvas field tents stretch in orderly rows beneath camouflage netting, while jeeps and half-tracks rumble through the muddy compound. Inside the communications tent, radio operators wearing headphones bend over their equipment, transcribing coded messages that crackle through the static-filled airwaves. Macbeth sits alone at a folding table, staring at the official telegram that arrived 30 minutes after his encounter with the resistance operatives. The Western Union message bears the seal of Allied High Command, and its contents seem to burn through the thin yellow paper. General Macbeth Stop effective immediately, promoted commanding General 9th Armored Division. Stop reports Supreme Allied Headquarters for strategic briefing. Stop congratulations on exceptional battlefield performance. Stop. His hands tremble slightly as he sets the telegram down beside his field map, where red pins mark the day's advances and blue arrows indicate tomorrow's planned assault routes. The weight of the resistance operative's words settles heavily in his mind, like smoke from the distant artillery barrage that continues to thunder across the horizon. Banquo enters the tent, ducking beneath the canvas flap, his uniform still bearing the dust and grime of the day's fighting. He notices the telegram immediately, his experienced eye recognizing the official formatting. "Promotion?" Banquo asks, settling into a metal folding chair that creaks under his weight. "About time. Your tactical innovations at Anzio earned you general's stars twice over." Macbeth's dark eyes meet his friend's gaze, and something new lurks in their depths, a hunger that wasn't there before the encounter with the mysterious trio. 9th Armored Division. 15,000 men under my direct command." He pauses, listening to the distant drone of night reconnaissance aircraft and the rhythmic rumble of supply convoys moving through the darkness. But those resistance operatives, they spoke of theater command, Duncan's position. Banquo's expression grows troubled as he lights a cigarette, the flame from his Zippo lighter casting dancing shadows across the tent walls. "Mac, you don't seriously believe those people had genuine intelligence about future command structures? Resistance fighters deal in rumors and wishful thinking." Outside the tent, sentries patrol the perimeter with their M1 Garans at ready position, their boots squelching through the mud as they maintain vigilance against German infiltrators. The constant background symphony of war continues, Distant machine gun fire, the occasional crack of a sniper's rifle, and the low rumble of tanks repositioning under cover of darkness. Macbeth rises and moves to a portable field desk where communication equipment awaits. He begins composing a letter on military letterhead, his pen scratching against the paper as he chooses his words carefully. "My dearest Margaret," he writes, his voice low as he speaks the words aloud. "The fog of war has revealed unexpected opportunities. Today brought news of my promotion to divisional command, but intelligence suggests even greater responsibilities may lie ahead." He pauses, his pen hovering over the paper as he considers how much to reveal about the day's strange encounter. Certain sources have indicated that Supreme Theater Command may soon require new leadership. Duncan MacReynolds, for all his decorated service, may not be the man to lead us through the final push to Berlin. Banquo watches his friend with growing unease, recognizing the calculating tone that creeps into Macbeth's voice. "Mac, be careful what you commit to writing. Military communications are monitored, even personal correspondence." Macbeth continues writing, his ambition now burning like the oil fires that dot the war-torn landscape. If such an opportunity arose, it would mean commanding all Allied ground forces in Western Europe, the power to shape not just military strategy, but the post-war world itself. Thunder rolls across the sky. Whether from distant bombardment or an approaching storm, it's impossible to tell, in this landscape where nature and warfare have become indistinguishable. The elegant drawing room of the Macbeth estate in Virginia overlooks rolling hills that seem untouched by the distant war. Crystal decanters catch the afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows draped with heavy velvet curtains. Margaret Macbeth, known to Washington society as Lady Macbeth, sits poised at an antique writing desk, her perfectly manicured fingers holding her husband's letter. At 34, she possesses the refined beauty and calculated charm that opens doors in the highest echelons of American society. Her dark hair is styled in the fashionable victory rolls of the era, and her tailored silk dress speaks of wealth and sophistication. But beneath her composed exterior burns an ambition that matches her husband's own hunger for power. The letter trembles slightly in her hands as she reads his words a second time, her green eyes growing brighter with each mention of promotion and opportunity. On the mahogany side table beside her, a silver-framed photograph shows her husband in full dress uniform, his chest decorated with campaign ribbons and medals that represent his rise through the military hierarchy. "Theater Command," she whispers to herself, the words carrying the weight of destiny. "Supreme Allied Commander in Western Europe." She rises gracefully and moves to the tall windows, gazing out at the manicured gardens where her gardener tends to victory gardens of vegetables grown to support the war effort. But her mind sees far beyond these peaceful Virginia hills to the corridors of power in Washington, where wives of commanding generals hold court among senators, cabinet members, and foreign dignitaries. The grandfather clock in the corner chimes 4 o'clock, its deep resonance filling the room as Margaret's imagination conjures images of state dinners at the White House, diplomatic receptions where her husband would brief President Roosevelt himself, and the social prominence that comes with commanding the largest military operation in human history. She moves to her own writing desk, a delicate Queen Anne piece that contrasts sharply with the masculine leather furniture her husband prefers. Her fountain pen glides across cream-colored stationery, embossed with the family crest as she begins her response. "My dearest William," she writes, her voice taking on the honeyed tone that has charmed Washington's political elite. "Your letter arrived as I was entertaining Mrs. Patterson, wife of the Secretary of War." The conversation naturally turned to the challenges facing our current theater leadership. She pauses, choosing her words with the precision of a diplomat negotiating a treaty. There is growing concern in certain circles about General MacReynolds' age and conservative approach to the final European campaign. Some question whether his cautious strategy prolongs the war unnecessarily. Outside her window, a military staff car pulls into the circular drive, its olive drab paint and government plates marking it as official business. Margaret watches with interest as a uniformed colonel emerges, carrying a leather briefcase that suggests classified materials. The colonel is announced by Margaret's housekeeper, an elderly woman whose son serves under Macbeth's command. "Mrs. Macbeth, Colonel Harrison from the War Department requests an audience. He says it concerns General Macbeth's new assignment." Margaret's pulse quickens as she recognizes the opportunity presenting itself. Colonel Harrison has been a frequent guest at her dinner parties, a bachelor officer whose career ambitions make him valuable to cultivate. His presence here, so soon after her husband's promotion, suggests the winds of change are already beginning to blow through military command structure. "Show him in, Mrs. Henderson. And please prepare tea service in the blue drawing room." As she awaits the colonel's entrance, Margaret returns to her letter, adding a postscript that carries deeper meaning. "Darling, sometimes fate requires those with vision to act decisively when opportunity presents itself. The greatest leaders in history understood that timing, combined with courage, can reshape the world itself." Colonel James Harrison enters the blue drawing room with the practiced bearing of a career military officer, his dress uniform immaculate despite the autumn rain that patters against the tall Georgian windows. His silver star and bronze star ribbons catch the light from the crystal chandelier as he removes his peaked cap, revealing prematurely gray hair that speaks of the pressures of wartime planning. Margaret rises gracefully from her position beside the fireplace, where logs crackle and cast dancing shadows across oil paintings of previous military generations. Her smile is perfectly calibrated, warm enough to suggest friendship, controlled enough to maintain propriety. "Colonel Harrison, what an unexpected pleasure. I trust the drive from Washington wasn't too difficult in this weather?" The colonel accepts the offered seat in a wingback chair upholstered in deep blue fabric, his briefcase resting carefully beside him on the Persian carpet. Through the windows, bare oak trees sway in the wind, while the distant sound of aircraft engines suggests military training flights from nearby Langley Field. "Mrs. Macbeth, I come bearing congratulations on your husband's promotion to divisional command. His tactical innovations have impressed the highest levels of leadership." Harrison's voice carries the measured tones of a man accustomed to briefing senior officials. "However, I also bring concerns that require discretion." Margaret settles across from him, her posture conveying attentive interest as she pours tea from a delicate spode service that has graced her family's table for 3 generations. The silver sugar tongs click softly against fine china as she prepares 2 cups with practiced elegance. "Concerns, Colonel? Surely William's battlefield successes speak for themselves. The liberation of 3 French villages in 2 weeks, minimal casualties, exemplary morale among his men." Harrison accepts his teacup, but his expression remains troubled as rain continues to streak the windows and the fire pops in the marble hearth. Indeed, General Macbeth's tactical brilliance is unquestioned. It's the strategic leadership at theater level that concerns certain members of the Joint Chiefs. He leans forward slightly, lowering his voice despite their privacy. General Mac Reynolds, for all his experience and honor, may not possess the aggressive instincts necessary for the final push to Berlin. His cautious approach, while minimizing casualties, may be prolonging the war itself. Margaret's green eyes sharpen with interest, though her expression remains one of concerned patriotism. Surely the Joint Chiefs wouldn't consider such a significant change in command structure at this critical juncture. "Not openly, no." Harrison sets down his teacup, the delicate china seeming fragile in his weathered hands, but there are informal discussions. Hypothetical scenarios, where theater command might require for younger leadership, more dynamic strategic vision. Outside, the staff car's engine idles in the circular drive while the driver waits patiently, windshield wipers cutting through the steady rainfall. In the distance, the low rumble of a military convoy suggests ongoing preparations for overseas deployment. Margaret rises and moves to the window, her reflection ghost-like in the rain-streaked glass, as she considers the implications of Harrison's words. "Colonel, if such discussions were to move beyond the hypothetical, what would be required to ensure the right leadership emerges?" Harrison's reflection joins hers in the window, his face grave in the dim afternoon light. Theater commanders serve at the pleasure of the President and Joint Chiefs. But military leadership, like politics, often depends on circumstances, events that reveal character under pressure. He turns to face her directly, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Sometimes great leaders must be willing to make difficult decisions for the greater good, to act when others hesitate." Margaret's smile grows more calculating as thunder rumbles overhead, whether from the storm or distant artillery exercises, unclear in this landscape, where war, preparation, and weather seem to merge into one ominous symphony. I understand completely, Colonel. When the stakes are the liberation of Europe itself, personal considerations must yield to duty. The evening shadows lengthen across the Macbeth estate as Colonel Harrison's staff car disappears down the tree-lined drive, its headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. Margaret stands at her writing desk, the weight of their conversation settling in her mind like smoke from the dying fire. Rain continues to tap against the windows with increasing urgency, as if nature itself anticipates the storm to come. Her fountain pen hovers over fresh stationery as she crafts her response to William's letter. Each word is chosen with the precision of a strategist planning a crucial offensive, her handwriting flowing across the page with elegant determination. My beloved William. She begins, her voice soft but carrying an undertone of steel. Your promotion fills me with pride, but your hints at greater opportunities set my heart racing with possibility. Today brought an unexpected visitor who confirmed your intuitions about the current theater leadership. She pauses, remembering Colonel Harrison's carefully chosen words about circumstances and character under pressure. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, while distant thunder suggests either approaching storms or the constant artillery practice that echoes from military installations throughout Virginia. Colonel Harrison shared concerns from the highest levels about General MacReynolds' conservative strategy. There is a growing sentiment that younger, more dynamic leadership could accelerate victory and save thousands of Allied lives. The question is not whether change will come, but who will have the courage to seize destiny when it presents itself. Margaret rises from her desk and moves to the mantelpiece, where silver-framed photographs display her husband with various military and political dignitaries. Her reflection in the ornate mirror above shows a woman transformed by ambition, her earlier social grace now sharpened into something more dangerous. She returns to her letter, her pen moving with increased urgency, as if time itself is a military objective that must be captured before enemy forces arrive. Darling, I have been thinking about your mention of intelligence regarding Supreme Theater Command. Sometimes fate provides opportunities that lesser souls would hesitate to grasp. But you are not among the hesitant. You are among those born to lead, to make the hard decisions that shape history itself. The grandfather clock chimes 8 times, its deep resonance filling the room as Margaret's imagination conjures scenes of her husband commanding vast armies, directing the final assault on Nazi Germany, and accepting the surrender of the Third Reich. She sees herself beside him at victory celebrations, the toast of Washington society, the wife of the man who liberated Europe. When you return for your strategic briefing at Supreme Allied Headquarters, certain opportunities may present themselves. Remember that greatness often requires decisive action when others might counsel patience. Duncan MacReynolds is a good man, but good men sometimes lack the ruthless clarity necessary to end wars quickly. Outside, a military patrol passes along the country road, their jeep's headlights sweeping across the estate's iron gates before disappearing into the rainy night. The sound of their engine fades, leaving only the storm and Margaret's burning ambition. She concludes her letter with words that carry the weight of prophecy. My dearest husband, you were born for command of the highest order. When the moment comes to claim your destiny, do not let honor restrain you from greatness. History will forgive much in a man who saves thousands of lives by acting decisively when others falter. As she seals the letter in an envelope marked for overseas military post, lightning illuminates the drawing room in stark white brilliance, followed by thunder that shakes the windows and seems to herald the approaching tragedy that will engulf them all. Margaret moves to the telephone, a heavy black Bakelite model that connects her to operators across the country. Her voice is steady as she places a call to Washington, to certain contacts who can ensure her letter reaches her husband through the fastest possible military channels. Supreme Allied Headquarters occupies a requisitioned chateau in the French countryside, its Gothic towers and medieval walls now bristling with radio antennas and camouflaged with military netting. Armored staff cars navigate the muddy courtyard between sandbagged defensive positions, while uniformed guards patrol the perimeter with Thompson submachine guns. The ancient stone walls echo with the urgent communications of modern warfare. General Duncan MacReynolds arrives in his command vehicle, a modified Cadillac bearing 5-star flags that flutter in the crisp November wind. At 62, he moves with the deliberate dignity of a career officer who has earned every decoration on his chest through decades of honorable service. His weathered face bears the weight of commanding over 2 million Allied soldiers across the European theater. Macbeth stands at attention on the chateau's front steps as Duncan approaches, flanked by his aide-de-camp and senior staff officers. The scene has all the formal precision of military protocol, yet beneath the surface, darker currents swirl like the smoke from distant artillery exchanges that continue to thunder across the horizon. William, Duncan's voice carries genuine warmth as he clasps Macbeth's hand. Congratulations on your promotion to divisional command. Your tactical innovations at the Siegfried Line breakthrough saved hundreds of Allied lives. The 9th Armored Division couldn't ask for better leadership. Duncan's praise stings Macbeth like acid, each word of commendation feeding the ambition that has grown into an all-consuming hunger. Behind his respectful military bearing, Macbeth's dark eyes calculate distances, timing, and opportunities, with the same precision he once applied to planning artillery barrages. Inside the chateau's Great Hall, converted into a strategic command center, massive maps cover the ancient tapestries, while radio operators maintain constant contact with frontline units. The medieval grandeur clashes with modern military efficiency as officers move between plotting tables marked with colored pins, indicating Allied and German positions. Duncan gestures toward the central map, where red arrows show the planned offensive toward the Rhine River. The final push into Germany will require coordination between 12 armored divisions, supported by concentrated air power and artillery. It's the largest military operation since D-Day, and its success will determine how quickly we can end this war. Macbeth studies the battle plans with professional interest, but his mind dwells on the letter from Margaret that arrived that morning through encrypted military channels. Her words burn in his memory like phosphorus shells. Greatness requires decisive action when others counsel patience. Banquo enters the command center, mud still clinging to his boots from a frontline inspection. His honest face shows the strain of constant combat, but his eyes remain clear with the moral certainty that has sustained him through 3 years of warfare. Duncan, the morale reports from the forward units are excellent. The men believe this final offensive will put us in Berlin by Christmas. Banquo's voice carries the confidence of a soldier who trusts his commanders implicitly. Duncan nods with satisfaction as he reviews casualty reports and supply requisitions spread across an oak table that once hosted medieval banquets. Excellent. William, I want you to coordinate with Banquo on the armored spearhead. Your divisions will punch through German defenses while his units secure the flanks. The irony cuts through Macbeth like a bayonet thrust, Duncan trusting him with the most crucial elements of the offensive even as darker plans take shape in his mind. Outside the tall windows, Allied fighters streak across the gray sky toward German positions, their engines a constant reminder of the war's relentless momentum. That evening, Duncan announces his intention to remain at the chateau overnight to review final operational details with his senior staff. The medieval chambers, once home to French nobility, now echo with the conversations of American generals planning the liberation of Europe. Midnight settles over the chateau like a burial shroud, broken only by the distant rumble of night bombing raids and the steady patter of rain against ancient stone walls. The medieval corridors echo with the footsteps of sentries making their rounds, their flashlights cutting brief arcs through the darkness before disappearing around corners lined with centuries-old tapestries. Macbeth paces his assigned quarters, a stone chamber that once housed French nobles but now serves as temporary lodging for senior Allied officers. The narrow window offers a view of the courtyard where armored vehicles wait in perfect formation under camouflage netting, ready for tomorrow's offensive operations. His service pistol rests on the nightstand beside Margaret's letter, the words seeming to burn through the paper in the dim light of a single lamp. When the moment comes to claim your destiny, do not let honor restrain you from greatness. The letter trembles in his hands as conflicting impulses wage war in his mind. Down the corridor, Duncan sleeps peacefully in the chateau's master suite, trusting in the security provided by his loyal officers and the perimeter guards who patrol the grounds. His breathing is deep and regular, the sleep of a man whose conscience bears no burden beyond the necessary casualties of war. Macbeth moves through the darkened hallways with the stealth he learned in night reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines. The ancient floorboards creak slightly under his boots, but the sound is masked by the constant background symphony of distant artillery and the wind that howls through the chateau's towers like the voices of the war's countless dead. He pauses outside Duncan's door, his hand frozen on the brass handle as memories flood his mind. Duncan recommending him for promotion after the Sicily campaign. Duncan personally decorating him with the Silver Star after Anzio. Duncan trusting him with divisional command and the lives of 15,000 soldiers. The weight of his service revolver feels impossibly heavy as internal voices battle for supremacy. Honor and duty war against ambition and destiny, in a conflict more brutal than any battlefield engagement he has ever commanded. Thunder crashes overhead, whether from the storm or Allied bombers striking German positions deep in enemy territory. The sound provides natural cover as Macbeth's trembling hand turns the door handle with professional silence. The master suite is dimly lit by moonlight filtering through heavy curtains. Duncan's personal effects are arranged with military precision on an antique writing desk. Photographs of his wife and children back in Ohio. Strategic reports marked with his careful annotations. And the 5-star insignia that represents supreme authority over the largest military force in human history. Macbeth's breathing becomes labored as he approaches the sleeping figure who has shown him nothing but trust and paternal guidance. Duncan's face in sleep appears younger, more vulnerable, stripped of the authority that commands armies and shapes the fate of nations. For a moment that stretches like eternity, Macbeth hesitates. His military training wars against his moral instincts as Margaret's words echo in his memory, alongside his own oath of loyalty sworn so many years ago at West Point. Lightning illuminates the room in stark white brilliance, followed immediately by thunder that seems to shake the very foundations of the ancient chateau. In that moment of cosmic violence, something dies in Macbeth's soul even as opportunity presents itself in the darkness. The deed, when it comes, happens in shadow and silence, swift as a battlefield execution and final as the liberation of Europe itself. Dawn breaks gray and merciless over the chateau, its pale light filtering through windows still streaked with the previous night's rain. The courtyard awakens with the methodical efficiency of military routine, as orderlies prepare vehicles for the day's strategic movements, and radio operators establish communications with forward units advancing toward German positions. Macbeth stands in his quarters, staring at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. They appear clean in the morning light, but in his mind, they burn with invisible blood that no amount of washing can remove. His service pistol has been cleaned and holstered with mechanical precision, yet its weight feels different now, heavier with the gravity of what it has accomplished. The chateau's ancient bells, somehow spared by the war's destruction, chime 7 times across the French countryside. Their resonance seems to mock the silence that now fills the master suite down the corridor, where Supreme Allied Theater Command has passed from this world in a moment of shadow and lightning. Macbeth's aide-de-camp, Lieutenant Morrison, arrives with the morning briefing materials and coffee in a metal field cup. His young face bears the earnest efficiency of career military training as he spreads tactical reports across the wooden table. General, sir, the forward reconnaissance indicates German defensive positions are weaker than anticipated. General MacReynolds wanted to review the final assault coordinates before the 0800 briefing. The lieutenant's words hit Macbeth like artillery fragments, each mention of Duncan's name driving deeper into his consciousness. He forces his voice to remain steady, military bearing intact despite the psychological earthquake occurring beneath his composed exterior. Has someone checked on the general this morning? He was reviewing strategic documents quite late last night. Lieutenant Morrison's expression shifts to mild concern. No, sir. His aide assumed he was still sleeping. Should I? The scream that cuts through the morning air comes from Duncan's orderly, a veteran sergeant whose voice has commanded respect on battlefields from North Africa to Normandy. The sound pierces the chateau's stone walls like shrapnel, bringing officers running from their quarters with the reflexive urgency of combat veterans responding to enemy contact. Macbeth arrives at Duncan's door with calculated timing, not first, which would suggest foreknowledge, but among the initial responders, which demonstrates appropriate concern for his commanding officer. The master suite's heavy door stands open, revealing a scene that will haunt every witness for the remainder of their lives. Duncan MacReynolds, Supreme Allied Theater Commander, lies motionless on the bed that had been his final resting place. His weathered face, which had commanded the respect of presidents and prime ministers, now stares sightlessly at the medieval ceiling where centuries of French nobility had once gazed in their own final moments. Banquo pushes through the crowd of officers, his honest face contorting with shock and disbelief as he processes the impossible scene before him. My God! Duncan! How is this possible? The security, the guards. The chateau erupts into controlled chaos as senior officers secure the scene while radio operators frantically contact Allied High Command with news that will shake the foundations of military leadership. Outside, sentries maintain their posts with increased vigilance, uncertain whether Duncan's death represents enemy infiltration or something far more sinister. Colonel Harrison arrives within hours, his staff car kicking up mud as it speeds through the courtyard gates. His face bears the grim expression of a man whose worst fears have been realized, though perhaps not in the manner he had anticipated when discussing hypothetical leadership changes with certain ambitious wives in Virginia drawing rooms. As military police begin their investigation, Macbeth performs grief and shock with the same precision he once applied to tactical deception operations. Yet beneath his composed exterior, paranoia begins to take root like poison gas seeping through defensive lines. Every glance from fellow officers seems suspicious, every question from investigators carries hidden implications, and every mention of succession planning feels like enemy artillery ranging in on his position. 3 days after Duncan's death, the weight of Supreme Allied Theater Command settles on Macbeth's shoulders like a lead blanket. The 5-star insignia gleams on his collar as he stands before the massive strategic map in the chateau's command center, but their brightness cannot illuminate the shadows that have taken residence in his mind. Allied High Command's telegram arrived with bureaucratic efficiency. Field Promotion General Macbeth to Supreme Theater Commander effective immediately. Stop operational continuity paramount. Stop. Final offensive schedule unchanged. Stop. The Pentagon's machinery of war waits for no change. Man's grief, not even for a decorated commander whose death has sent shockwaves through Washington's highest corridors. Macbeth's first strategic briefing as Supreme Commander unfolds in the Great Hall where medieval banners once hung, now replaced by tactical charts showing German defensive positions along the Rhine. 12 divisional commanders sit around the ancient oak table, their faces bearing the weathered respect earned through years of combat leadership. Yet something has changed in their eyes. Where once they showed the easy camaraderie of brother officers, now there lurks a subtle distance, a questioning that cuts through military hierarchy like cold steel. They perform their duties with perfect efficiency, but their glances linger too long, their responses carry hesitation where once there was immediate compliance. Colonel Patterson, Duncan's former intelligence chief, presents reconnaissance reports with clinical precision. Sir, German morale continues to decline across all sectors. However, our investigation into General Mac Reynolds' death has revealed inconsistencies in the security timeline. The words hit Macbeth like incoming artillery, each syllable loaded with implication. His hands remain steady as he reviews the tactical documents, but beneath the surface, paranoia begins its insidious work, like poison gas, seeping through defensive lines. Banquo sits at the far end of the table, his honest face troubled by more than grief for their fallen commander. His blue eyes, once warm with friendship and shared memories of campaigns from Sicily to Normandy, now carry questions that he dare not voice in open session. After the briefing dissolves, officers departing for their respective commands with the mechanical efficiency of wartime routine, Banquo approaches Macbeth with the careful steps of a man navigating a minefield. Mac. His voice carries the weight of decades of friendship. This promotion, it came awfully fast. Duncan's body isn't even cold, and already you're wearing his stars. Macbeth's response comes with calculated precision, his voice carrying the authority of supreme command even as internal alarms scream warnings. The war doesn't pause for mourning, old friend. Every day we delay the final offensive costs Allied lives. Duncan himself would have wanted operational continuity. Outside the chateau's windows, Allied bombers thunder overhead toward German industrial targets, their engines drowning out the conversation while casting shadows across the tactical maps. The constant machinery of war continues its relentless rhythm, indifferent to the human dramas unfolding beneath its mechanical wings. Banquo's expression grows more troubled as he studies his oldest friend's face, searching for traces of the man who once shared foxholes and battlefield rations during their rise through the military hierarchy. Mac. There's something different about you. Ever since those resistance operatives, ever since Duncan's death. It's like you've become someone else entirely. The accusation hangs in the air like smoke from distant artillery exchanges, unspoken but clearly understood by both men. Macbeth's hand moves unconsciously to his service pistol, the same weapon that ended Duncan's life and elevated him to supreme command. That evening, Macbeth retreats to his private office in the chateau's tower, a medieval chamber now equipped with secure communication equipment that links him directly to Allied High Command in London and Washington. The ancient stone walls seem to close in around him as he reviews intelligence reports by the harsh light of military-issue lamps that cast sharp shadows across tactical documents. Through the narrow window, he watches Banquo's jeep navigate the muddy courtyard, returning from an inspection of forward artillery positions. Each movement of his oldest friend now appears calculated and threatening in Macbeth's increasingly paranoid imagination. The easy camaraderie of their shared military career has curdled into something darker, more dangerous. The resistance operative's words echo in his memory like artillery shells exploding in his consciousness. General Banquo, your son will carry the banner of military leadership into the next generation. The prophecy that once seemed like harmless fortune-telling now burns with the intensity of classified intelligence that threatens his entire command structure. Macbeth activates the secure telephone system, its green rotary dial clicking as he connects to a contact in the Office of Strategic Services. Major Reynolds, a shadow operative whose official records remain classified even to Supreme Theater Command, answers on the second ring. Reynolds here. Encrypted channel secured. Macbeth's voice drops to barely above a whisper as rain pelts the tower windows with increasing fury. Major, I need a black operation. Target is a potential security risk to ongoing strategic operations. Someone with access to sensitive intelligence who may be compromised. The pause on the other end stretches like the silence between artillery salvos. Sir, are we discussing enemy infiltration or internal security concerns? Internal. A divisional commander whose loyalty has become questionable. Someone who asks too many questions about recent command changes. Reynolds' professional tone carries no emotion, the clinical efficiency of a man trained to eliminate problems without moral hesitation. Understood, sir. Operational parameters? Macbeth stares out at the courtyard where Banquo's quarters are located, his mind calculating distances, timing, and plausible scenarios. Tomorrow night, during the routine reconnaissance patrol along Sector 7, German sniper activity has been increasing in that area. Tragic but believable battlefield casualty. Lightning illuminates the tower chamber in stark white brilliance, followed by thunder that seems to shake the ancient foundations. In that moment of cosmic violence, Macbeth crosses another moral boundary from which there can be no return. Below in the courtyard, sentries continue their patrols with mechanical precision, their flashlights cutting brief arcs through the darkness. They remain unaware that their supreme commander has just ordered the assassination of one of the most decorated and honorable officers in the Allied forces. After ending the encrypted communication, Macbeth opens his field desk and begins composing the operational orders that will eliminate Banquo while maintaining plausible deniability. Each word is chosen with the precision of an artillery targeting solution, designed to achieve maximum effect while concealing the true source of fire. Operational Order 347, Forward Reconnaissance Patrol, Sector 7, 2100 hours. Divisional Commander Banquo, to conduct personal assessment of German defensive positions. Intelligence indicates increased enemy sniper activity. All support units maintain radio silence during operation. His hand trembles slightly as he signs the order with the authority of Supreme Theater Command. The document that will destroy his oldest friend bears the same official formatting as thousands of other tactical directives, indistinguishable from the routine paperwork of military operations. Outside, Allied night fighters streak across the storm-darkened sky toward German positions, their engines providing mechanical accompaniment to the human tragedy unfolding in the chateau's tower. The war's relentless machinery continues its advance toward Berlin, indifferent to the personal betrayals that fuel its progression. The next evening arrives, with the methodical inevitability of artillery barrages, each passing hour bringing Macbeth closer to a point of no return that will sever the last threads connecting him to the honorable officer he once was. The chateau's command center buzzes with routine operational activity as staff officers coordinate supply lines and monitor radio communications from frontline units. At precisely 2,100 hours, Banquo departs for Sector 7 in a camouflaged jeep, accompanied by his aide-de-camp and 2 enlisted men for security. His final salute to the chateau's sentries carries the crisp efficiency of a career officer who has never questioned orders or doubted the integrity of his commanders. Macbeth watches from his tower window as the vehicle's headlights disappear into the darkness beyond the perimeter gates. Rain streaks the ancient glass while thunder rolls across the French countryside. Whether from the storm or distant Allied bombing runs impossible to distinguish in this landscape, where nature and warfare have merged into one ominous symphony. The radio report arrives at 2,247 hours, crackling through static-filled airwaves with the clinical precision of battlefield communications. Command Post Alpha. This is Reconnaissance 7. Contact with enemy sniper position. General Banquo down. Repeat. General Banquo down. Request immediate medical evacuation. But the follow-up transmission, arriving 12 minutes later, carries the finality that Macbeth both expected and dreaded. Command Post Alpha. Medical team reports General Banquo Kia. Single sniper round. Professional placement. No other casualties. German position eliminated by counter-sniper fire. Asterisk, asterisk. The command center erupts into controlled chaos as senior officers process the loss of another decorated general in less than a week. Radio operators frantically coordinate casualty reports, while intelligence staff analyze the tactical situation that claimed one of the Allied forces' most respected leaders. Macbeth performs grief with the same precision he once applied to tactical deception operations, his face bearing appropriate shock and sorrow as he addresses the assembled staff officers in the Great Hall. Gentlemen, we have lost not just a divisional commander, but one of the finest officers ever to wear the American uniform. General Banquo's sacrifice will not be forgotten, and his tactical innovations will continue to guide our advance toward Berlin. Yet even as he speaks these words of tribute, paranoia gnaws at his consciousness like poison gas seeping through defensive lines. Every glance from his remaining officers seems laden with suspicion. Every hesitation in their responses suggests growing doubt about his leadership and the convenient timing of recent command changes. Colonel Harrison, who arrived that afternoon with updated strategic directives from Washington, approaches Macbeth after the memorial service with an expression that combines professional sympathy with barely concealed calculation. General, these losses, Duncan and now Banquo, they're creating concern in certain circles about operational security. Some are questioning whether enemy infiltration has penetrated our command structure. The irony cuts through Macbeth like bayonet thrust, accusations of enemy infiltration when the true threat comes from within, from his own unchecked ambition, and the bloody path it has carved through the Allied command hierarchy. That night, alone in his tower chamber, Macbeth stares at his reflection in the rain-streaked window and no longer recognizes the man looking back at him. The honorable officer who once shared foxholes and battlefield rations with Banquo has been replaced by something darker, more ruthless, a creature of pure ambition wrapped in the uniform of Supreme Allied Command. Sleep, when it finally comes, brings no peace. In his dreams, Duncan and Banquo appear at the head of endless columns of the war dead, their accusing eyes reflecting the flames of burning European cities. Their silent reproach follows him through nightmarish landscapes, where the machinery of war has consumed not just enemy forces, but honor, friendship, and human decency itself. Thunder continues to roll across the chateau throughout the night, while in the distance, Allied artillery maintains its relentless barrage against German positions. The sound provides mechanical accompaniment to Macbeth's complete transformation from decorated war hero to paranoid tyrant whose appetite for power has made him more dangerous than any enemy force. December 1944. The Macbeth estate in Virginia lies shrouded in winter silence, its once immaculate gardens now dormant under a blanket of early snow. Inside the Georgian manor, crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across rooms that echo with emptiness and the weight of accumulated guilt. The grandfather clock in the foyer marks time with relentless precision, each chime a reminder of decisions that cannot be undone. Margaret Macbeth moves through the darkened corridors like a ghost haunting her own home, her silk nightgown trailing behind her as she navigates familiar rooms in the grip of sleepless torment. Her once perfect appearance has deteriorated into something hollow and haunted, her victory-rolled hair now disheveled, her green eyes sunken with the weight of knowledge that burns through her consciousness. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly housekeeper, follows at a discreet distance, her weathered face creased with concern as she watches her employer's nocturnal wanderings. The old woman has served the Macbeth family for 20 years, but she has never witnessed behavior so disturbing, so disconnected from the elegant socialite who once charmed Washington's political elite. "Mrs. Macbeth," the housekeeper whispers, "you should return to bed. You haven't slept properly in weeks." But Margaret seems oblivious to her presence, moving through the blue drawing room where she once entertained Colonel Harrison and plotted her husband's rise to power. Her hands work frantically, washing and rewashing themselves in imaginary water as she stares at palms that appear clean but feel eternally stained. "The blood, Mrs. Henderson, there's so much blood on them. Duncan's blood, and now Banquo's. It won't wash away, no matter how hard I scrub." She pauses before the portrait of her husband in full dress uniform, his chest decorated with campaign ribbons that represent years of honorable service before ambition corrupted his soul. The painting seems to mock her now, showing the man William once was, rather than the paranoid tyrant he has become. Telegraph messages from overseas arrive with increasing frequency, each bearing news that confirms Margaret's worst fears about the path they have chosen. Military communiques speak of declining morale among senior officers, whispered concerns about Macbeth's increasingly erratic command decisions, and growing resistance to his authoritarian leadership style. The latest telegram, delivered that evening by a somber-faced Western Union operator, carries words that strike Margaret like artillery shells. Allied High Command expressing concerns regarding theater commander mental stability, stop congressional inquiry into recent command deaths, initiated stop situation, deteriorating rapidly, stop. Margaret clutches the yellow paper with trembling hands, her mind reeling as she processes the implications. The grand ambitions that once seemed within their grasp now crumble like cities under Allied bombardment, leaving only ruins and the bitter taste of overreaching pride. Outside, military vehicles occasionally pass along the country road, their engines reminding her of the war that continues to rage across Europe under her husband's increasingly unstable command. Each convoy carries supplies and reinforcements toward a conflict that may be won despite his leadership rather than because of it. That night, Margaret's sleepwalking becomes more pronounced, her voice carrying through the manor's halls as she relives conversations and decisions that led to their current nightmare. When you return for your strategic briefing, certain opportunities may present themselves. Do not let honor restrain you from greatness. 1. Her own words, preserved in the letters she sent to encourage William's ambition, now return to haunt her like the voices of the war's countless dead. Each phrase that once burned with possibility now carries the weight of damnation, evidence of her complicity in the destruction of honorable men. The housekeeper finds her in the morning, collapsed in the drawing room where Colonel Harrison first spoke of hypothetical leadership changes. Margaret lies curled on the Persian carpet like a child seeking comfort, her lips moving in whispered apologies to men who can no longer hear her repentance. Allied Supreme Headquarters, now relocated to a fortified bunker complex near the Rhine River, buzzes with carefully orchestrated rebellion. The concrete walls, reinforced against German artillery, echo with whispered conversations that carry more explosive power than any enemy bombardment. Senior Allied officers move through the underground corridors, with the calculated precision of men planning a military coup. Colonel Harrison leads a clandestine meeting in a secure briefing room, deep beneath the frozen German soil. Maps of the European theater cover the concrete walls, but tonight they serve as backdrop for conspiracy rather than tactical planning. The assembled officers represent the cream of Allied military leadership, men whose decorations and battlefield experience command respect from Washington to London. Gentlemen, Harrison's voice carries the gravity of men who have decided to act against a superior officer. The situation has reached critical mass. General Macbeth's command decisions over the past month have bordered on tactical insanity. His paranoid purges of staff officers are crippling our operational efficiency. General Patterson, Duncan's former chief of staff, spreads classified reports across the metal table with clinical precision. The casualty rates from Macbeth's unauthorized offensive operations have increased 40%. He's throwing entire divisions against fortified German positions with no strategic justification beyond personal glory. Through the bunker's ventilation system, the distant rumble of Allied artillery provides constant background noise as the final push toward Berlin continues under Macbeth's increasingly erratic command. Outside, winter has frozen the battlefield into a landscape of ice and death, where tactical mistakes carry the price of thousands of lives. Intelligence reports paint a picture of a commander losing grip on both reality and military effectiveness. Radio intercepts reveal German forces mocking Allied tactical decisions, calling Macbeth's recent operations gifts from the Reich due to their predictable and wasteful nature. The Joint Chiefs are already discussing replacement options, Harrison continues, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. But they need plausible cause for removal. A military commander can't simply be relieved for suspicion of previous actions. The unspoken accusations hang in the air like poison gas. Duncan's convenient death, Banquo's elimination by enemy sniper, and the systematic removal of any officer who questions Macbeth's authority. These career military men understand battlefield casualties, but the pattern of deaths among Macbeth's potential rivals defies statistical probability. Meanwhile, 60 miles away in his private command bunker, Macbeth stares at intelligence reports that confirm his worst paranoid fantasies. German radio intercepts suggest Allied officers are communicating through encrypted channels he cannot access. His own intelligence staff provides only sanitized reports, their loyalty no longer certain in an atmosphere of suspicion and fear. He reaches for his secure telephone, connecting to the same OSS operatives who eliminated Banquo with such professional efficiency. Major Reynolds, I need enhanced surveillance on my senior staff. Someone is organizing opposition to my command authority. The pause on the encrypted line stretches longer than usual. Sir, with respect, conducting surveillance operations against Allied officers requires specific authorization from Washington. The legal implications. I am Washington. Macbeth's voice echoes through the concrete bunker with manic intensity. I command 2 million Allied soldiers across the European theater. My authority supersedes bureaucratic protocols. But even as he speaks these words, Macbeth recognizes the hollow ring of desperate authority. The power he murdered to obtain now slips through his fingers like winter rain, eroded by the same paranoid suspicions that drove him to eliminate Duncan and Banquo. His aide-de-camp, Lieutenant Morrison, enters with the evening intelligence briefing, his young face bearing carefully neutral expressions that reveal nothing of his thoughts about his commander's deteriorating mental state. Sir, reconnaissance reports indicate unusual Allied troop movements in sectors not authorized for redeployment. Multiple divisions are repositioning without formal orders from theater command. The words hit Macbeth like incoming artillery. His own forces, the massive military machine he commands in name, are moving independently of his authority. The conspiracy he feared has materialized into tactical reality. His subordinate commanders are preparing for military action against their own supreme leader. Dawn breaks cold and gray over the Rhine River as Allied forces position themselves for what history will record as the strangest military confrontation of World War II. American officers preparing to arrest their own supreme theater commander. Armored vehicles move through the winter landscape with deliberate precision, their tracks crushing frozen mud as they surround Macbeth's command bunker. Inside the concrete fortress, Macbeth receives the telegram that shatters his remaining sanity like artillery glass. The Western Union message bears the stark finality of military communication. Regret to inform Margaret Macbeth. Found deceased estate grounds. Stop apparent suicide. Stop remains being prepared for military funeral. Stop deepest condolences. Stop. The paper falls from his trembling hands as the weight of total loss crashes over him like collapsing bunker walls. Margaret, his partner in ambition and architect of his rise to power, has paid the ultimate price for their shared corruption. Her death leaves him utterly alone in a concrete tomb surrounded by enemies of his own making. Lieutenant Morrison enters with reports of Allied forces surrounding the bunker complex, his young face pale with the knowledge that he serves a commander who has become the enemy of his own army. Sir, multiple armored divisions have taken positions around the perimeter. Colonel Harrison is requesting your immediate surrender. Macbeth's laughter echoes through the bunker with manic intensity, the sound of a man whose sanity has finally snapped under the weight of guilt and paranoia. Surrender? To my own subordinates? I am Supreme Allied Theater Commander. I wear the stars that Duncan wore, command the armies that conquered North Africa and Sicily. He moves to the bunker's weapon rack, selecting his service rifle with the mechanical efficiency of a career soldier. Outside, Allied tanks position their main guns toward the bunker entrances, while infantry squads deploy with the tactical precision Macbeth himself once taught at military academies. The irony burns through his consciousness like white phosphorus. The military skills he mastered to fight German forces now turned against him by officers he once considered loyal subordinates. The tactical innovations that earned him promotion are now employed to ensure his capture or destruction. Radio communications crackle with Harrison's final ultimatum. General Macbeth, you have 5 minutes to surrender and submit to military tribunal. Your command authority has been revoked by direct order of the Joint Chiefs. Resistance will be considered treason against Allied forces. But Macbeth no longer hears reason or recognizes legitimate authority. In his paranoid delusion, he sees only enemies surrounding him, the same way German forces must have felt as Allied armies closed the ring around their defensive positions. The final confrontation unfolds with the swift brutality of modern warfare. Macbeth emerges from the bunker firing his rifle with desperate accuracy, his military training evident even in madness as he moves between concrete barriers with professional skill. Allied soldiers return fire with reluctance, their faces showing the anguish of shooting at a decorated American general. The battle ends as abruptly as it began. Macbeth falls beside the bunker entrance, his blood staining the frozen ground as winter wind carries the smoke of battle across the German landscape. The 5-star insignia on his collar catches the pale sunlight, a final reminder of the authority he murdered to obtain and died trying to preserve. Colonel Harrison approaches the fallen commander with appropriate military dignity, his face bearing the sorrow of a man who has witnessed the complete corruption of honor and duty. Behind him, Allied officers begin the grim process of restoring proper command structure to forces that must still complete the liberation of Europe. As medical corpsmen cover Macbeth's body with a military blanket, Allied bombers thunder overhead toward Berlin, their engines providing mechanical accompaniment to the end of a tragedy that consumed some of the war's most decorated officers. The machinery of liberation continues its inexorable advance, indifferent to the human cost of unchecked ambition. In death, Macbeth achieves a kind of peace that eluded him in life, his face finally free from the paranoid suspicion that consumed his final months. History will remember him as both hero and villain, the decorated general who liberated French villages, and the paranoid tyrant who murdered his way to command.